Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Have you ever held on to something so tightly that it broke you? A person you loved, a dream that did not come true, a version of your life that you planned, that you worked for, that you believed in. And then one day it was gone. And instead of letting it go, you held on even tighter. You replayed it, you questioned it, you carried it with you everywhere you went. If that sounds familiar, this lesson is for you. This is a graded lesson for English learners who want peace, not just words. And today we are going to talk about one of the deepest teachings in human history, a teaching that is more than 2,000 years old, a teaching that is still true today in your life, in your heart right now. Buddha said that the root of all suffering is attachment. Not love, not desire, not ambition, attachment, the clinging, the grasping, the refusal to let things be what they are and people be who they are. Listen carefully. Most of us were never taught this. We were taught to hold on. Hold on to your job. Hold on to your relationship. Hold on to who you are. Never let go. Never give up. And so we hold, and we hold, and we wonder why we are so tired. But what if the holding is the problem? What if the pain you feel right now is not because you lost something, but because you are still gripping something that is already gone? By the end of this lesson, something will shift. You will not see attachment the same way again. You will understand why you hurt. And more than that, you will see a path forward. Not a path of giving up, not a path of not caring, a path of something much braver than that. You don't lose yourself when you let go. You find yourself. That is what we are going to explore today. The teaching of Buddha on attachment and suffering. Why clinging to people, to outcomes, to identity, to the past creates pain, and how the simple, terrifying, beautiful act of letting go can transform your entire life. Stay with me. This one is important. Before we go any further, if this kind of lesson speaks to you, if you want more stories and teachings that reach into something real, subscribe right now. There is more coming, and you do not want to miss it. Let us begin. Lesson 1. What attachment really means. Before we can let go of something, we need to understand what we are actually holding. Most people hear the word attachment and they think it means love. They think Buddha is telling them not to love, not to care, to become cold, to become distant, to stop wanting things. That is not what he meant. Not at all. Here's the truth. The word Buddha used was upadana. It is an ancient word, and it means clinging, grasping, the way your fingers wrap around something and will not open. Upadana is not love. It is the fear underneath love. It is the part that says, if I lose this, I lose everything. If this changes, I cannot survive. If this person leaves, I am nothing. That is attachment. Not the feeling, the grip. Think about the last time you checked your phone for a message that never came. You checked once, then again, then again. You told yourself you were just looking. But really you were clinging. You were holding on to a hope, a connection, a version of that person that maybe no longer existed. And every time the screen was empty, it hurt a little more. Not because you loved too much, but because you were gripping too hard. He woke up a prince. He had a palace. He had a wife he loved, a son he adored, servants, silk, gold, everything a person could want. And he was miserable. Not because his life was bad, But because he knew somewhere deep inside that all of it could disappear, that the beauty of his wife would fade, that his son would grow old, that the palace walls would one day crumble. He held all of it so tightly, and still it felt like sand slipping through his fingers. That man was Siddhartha Gautama, the man who would become Buddha. He left the palace not because he stopped loving his family. He left because he needed to understand why humans suffer, why we have so much and still feel empty, why we love so deeply and still feel alone. And after years of searching, sitting in silence, he found the answer. It was not the things themselves that caused pain. It was the clinging to them. It was the belief that we could make permanent what is by nature always changing. A clinging mind says, I cannot be happy unless I have this. I cannot be at peace unless things stay exactly as they are. I cannot breathe unless this person loves me back. An open mind says, I can love this fully and still hold it loosely. I can want without needing. I can care without controlling. I can be here fully without demanding that here lasts forever. That is the difference. Not between caring and not caring, between gripping and holding, between love and fear. You can love deeply and still hold loosely. That is not weakness. That is wisdom. That is the beginning of real freedom. Lesson 2. Why holding on always hurts. There is an old teaching from Buddhism that most people have never heard. It is called the second arrow. Imagine you are walking through a forest. Suddenly an arrow hits you. It is painful. It is real. That is life. Loss happens. Illness happens. Heartbreak happens. People leave. Plans fall apart. The arrow lands. And it hurts. But then something else happens. You reach into your own quiver and you shoot yourself with a second arrow. You ask, why did this happen to me? You think it is not fair. You replay the moment again and again. You blame yourself. You blame others. You refuse to accept what is. You shoot that second arrow deep into the same wound. Stay with me. The first arrow is pain. The first arrow is unavoidable. It is part of being alive and human and someone who loves things and loses things. But the second arrow is suffering. And the second arrow, Buddha said, is always our own choice. When we cling to what was, when we refuse to accept that something has changed, we are shooting ourselves with that second arrow. Over and over in the same place, and we wonder why we cannot heal. There is another teaching that sits beside this one. The Buddha called it anicca, impermanence. The truth that nothing in this world stays. Not the pain, not the joy, not the person sitting across from you at breakfast, not the face you see in the mirror. Everything is moving. Everything is changing, always, without asking our permission. If you plant a flower and love it deeply, one day it will wilt. If you fall in love and give your whole heart, one day that person will change or leave or die or simply become someone different from who they were. If you build a life and feel proud of it, one day circumstances will shift and you will have to build again. This is not tragedy. This is the nature of things. The tragedy is believing it should be otherwise. The tragedy is gripping the flower so hard you crush it. The tragedy is loving someone so tightly they cannot breathe. The tragedy is holding on to a life that has already moved on without you. There was a woman. She lost her mother 3 years before she was ready to lose her. No one is ever ready, of course, but she was especially not ready. And when her mother was gone, she did not grieve and move through it. She stopped. She froze. She kept her mother's room exactly as it was. She replayed their last conversation every single morning. She asked why every single day for 3 years. If only she had said more. If only she had visited more. If only. If only. If only. She was not mourning her mother. Not really. She was fighting reality. She was shooting herself with the second arrow every morning before she even got out of bed. And she was wondering why she could not feel alive. The mind we now know is not fixed. Scientists call it neuroplasticity. The brain can change. It can form new patterns. It can release old loops, but only if we let it. Only if we stop feeding the same thoughts, the same replays, the same second arrows day after day. Someone trapped in the past replays the same pain again and again. Their world becomes small. It becomes a room with no windows. Someone alive in the present feels the pain, sits with it, honors it, and then chooses to move. Their world stays open. It stays breathing. That woman eventually made a choice. She sat by a river one evening. She watched the water move, and she understood something. The river did not stop when her mother left. The wind did not stop. The world did not stop. And if she kept standing still, she would spend the rest of her life watching life flow past her instead of through her. She did not forget her mother that evening. She never forgot her, but she let go of the fight against what was true. And that single release began to change everything. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is a choice. Not an easy choice, the hardest one you will ever make, but a choice. Lesson 3, the self you are trying to protect. Here is a question that might make you uncomfortable. Who are you without the things you are holding? Take away the job title. Take away the relationship. Take away the house, the bank account, the reputation, the way people see you, the story you tell about your past. Take all of that away. Who is left? Most of us have never really sat with that question because it is frightening, because somewhere along the way, we begin to confuse what we have with who we are. We begin to confuse what we do with why we exist. And when those things are threatened, when the job disappears or the relationship ends or the reputation cracks, it does not feel like losing a thing. It feels like losing ourselves. That is the deepest form of attachment. Not holding on to people or outcomes, but holding on to an idea of who you are. Now think about this. Buddha taught something called anatta. It means non-self. It is one of the most misunderstood ideas in all of his teaching. It does not mean you do not exist. It means the self you think you are, fixed, permanent, defined, labeled, is not as solid as you believe. You have been changing since the moment you were born. The person you were at 7 years old is not the person you were at 17. The person you were at 25 is not the person reading these words right now. You have always been changing. You have always been becoming. And the suffering comes when you cling to one version of yourself and refuse to let it evolve. Marcus Aurelius understood this. He was the most powerful man in the Roman Empire. He commanded armies. He made laws. Millions of people lived or died by his word. And yet every morning he sat alone and wrote to himself. Not about power, not about victory, about letting go. About how quickly all things pass. About how foolish it is to tie your peace to anything outside yourself. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." He was not telling himself to stop caring. He was reminding himself every single morning not to confuse his worth with his role, not to confuse his peace with his position. The empire could fall. His name could be forgotten. He would still be himself. His inner life, his values, his capacity to think and choose and love, that could not be taken. Modern psychology has a name for something similar. In a type of therapy called ACT, therapists teach a skill they call cognitive diffusion. It means learning to step back from your thoughts instead of becoming them. Instead of saying, "I am a failure," you learn to say, "I am having the thought that I am a failure." Instead of saying, "I am broken," you learn to say, "I notice a feeling of being broken right now." It sounds like a small difference. It is not a small difference. It is everything. Because when you fuse with a thought, when you become it, you defend it, you protect it, you build your entire identity around it. And then you suffer every time life tries to show you something different. He moved from job to job for 7 years, always talented, always working hard, but always defined by his title: senior manager, director, vice president. Each promotion felt like proof that he existed. Each setback felt like evidence that he did not. When the company finally let him go during a difficult year, he did not just lose his job. He lost himself, or so he believed. He sat in his apartment for weeks. He could not answer the simple question, "What do I do now?" Because the real question underneath was, "Who am I now?" Those attached to who they were cannot become who they need to be. They stand at the door of the next chapter and refuse to walk through it, because walking through it means admitting that the last chapter is over. Those who release the old self make room for the real one. They walk through the door. They do not know what is on the other side, but they walk anyway. The self you are protecting so carefully, it is not as solid as you think. And that is not a threat. That is the most liberating truth you will ever hear. Because if the self is not fixed, then you are not trapped. You can change. You can grow. You can become something your past self could never have imagined. You are not your story. You are the one telling it. And you can always, always choose a new page. Lesson 4. When life forces you to let go. Sometimes we do not choose to let go. Life chooses for us. The relationship ends. The diagnosis arrives. The door closes. The person you built your world around walks out of it. And you did not decide this. You did not prepare for this. It simply happened. And now you are standing in the middle of something you never wanted, holding pieces of something that no longer exists, wondering how you are supposed to go on. Hear me on this. This kind of loss, the kind you did not choose, can break you. Or it can become the moment that finally teaches you what nothing else could. Not because pain is a gift. It is not always a gift. But because when everything is taken from you, you discover something that cannot be taken. And that discovery changes everything. Viktor Frankl was an Austrian psychiatrist. He was also a Jewish man living in Europe during one of the darkest periods in human history. In 1944, he was taken to a Nazi concentration camp. His wife was taken. His parents were taken. His manuscripts, years of work, were destroyed. He lost everything that a person can lose in this world. And yet, in the middle of that darkness, he noticed something. He noticed that even when the guards controlled his body, his food, his sleep, his movement, there was one thing they could not touch: the way he chose to respond to what was happening to him, the meaning he chose to find or not find in his suffering. He watched men around him give up, not because their conditions were worse, but because they had lost the sense that their life still had meaning. And he watched others survive the unsurvivable, not because they were stronger physically, but because they held on to something the camp could not take: a reason, a person waiting for them, a belief that their life still mattered. He survived. He went on to write a book that has changed millions of lives. And the central idea was this: everything can be taken from a person except the freedom to choose their attitude. That is letting go at its most extreme. Not letting go of something you decided to release. Letting go of the belief that you need things to be different in order to be okay. Letting go of the idea that your peace depends on your circumstances. Releasing the grip on the outcome. And finding in that release a freedom that nothing outside you can give or remove. If this lesson is reaching something in you right now, if it is touching a place you have been carrying quietly, subscribe right now. There is more coming, and you do not want to miss it. His name was Daniel, not a famous man, not a historical figure, just a man who had spent 15 years building his identity inside a company. He was good at his work. He was respected. He was by every measure successful. And then one Tuesday morning, his manager called him into a small room and told him the company was restructuring. His position was gone. He drove home in silence. He sat in his car in the driveway for 40 minutes. He could not go inside because inside was his life, his wife, his children, his mortgage, all the things that depended on him being the man he had just stopped being. For weeks, he barely spoke. He searched for jobs not because he wanted them, but because he needed to feel like himself again. He needed a title, a desk, a reason to get dressed. He was not looking for work. He was looking for himself. And then one evening, his youngest daughter climbed into his lap, put her small hand on his face and said, "Daddy, you seem sad. Are you still you?" he cried. Not because the question hurt, because it was the right question. And he realized he did not know the answer. It took months, slow, quiet, difficult months. But slowly, he began to separate himself from what he had lost. He began to ask, not who was I, but who am I now? He began to see that his value was never in the title. It was in the way he thought, the way he treated people, the way he showed up. Those things were still there. They had always been there. The job had simply been covering them the way furniture covers a floor. He rebuilt, not the same thing, something different, something more honest. The fearful person holds tighter when life feels uncertain. They grip harder, they control more, they shrink. The free person opens their hands and trusts the flow, not because they are not scared, They are scared, but they move anyway. They grieve and they release and they take the next step. You don't lose yourself when you let go. You find yourself. That is what Daniel found. Not immediately, not easily, but truly. Lesson 5. How to actually let go. Everyone says let go. Almost no one tells you how. So let us talk about that. Because letting go is not a decision you make once and then it is done. It is not a switch you flip. It is not a morning you wake up and suddenly feel nothing. It is a practice. It is something you choose again and again in small moments that most people never notice. Let me make this simple. A Vietnamese monk named Thich Nhat Hanh spent his life teaching people about love and freedom. He survived war. He survived exile. He was not allowed to return to his home country for decades. And through all of that, he remained one of the most peaceful human beings who ever lived. People asked him constantly, how do you do it? How do you hold so much pain and still smile? He said, you must love in such a way that the person you love feels free. And if you love something, you must also be willing to let it go free. That sentence does not mean stop loving. It means love without a leash. It means care without control. It means wanting what is good for someone, even if what is good for them is not you. There is an old idea that you cannot step into the same river twice. The river is always moving. The water you touched a moment ago is already gone, replaced by new water, always flowing, always changing. The river is never the same river, and yet we stand at the bank and try to grab the water. We try to keep it still. We close our fist around it, and it slips through anyway. It always slips through. What would happen if you stopped waiting for an apology that will never come? What would happen if you stopped replaying the conversation, changing your words, imagining a different ending? What would happen if you looked at the person who hurt you and, without forgetting what happened, simply decided to stop carrying it? Not for them, for you. She had loved him for 3 years. And for the last year of those 3, she had known somewhere quiet inside herself that it was over. Not because something dramatic happened, but because 2 people can grow in different directions and both still be good people. She knew this, and still she stayed. Because leaving felt like failure. Because she had told everyone he was the one. Because she was afraid of who she would be without him. When he finally said the words she had been dreading, she did not feel surprised. She felt relieved, and then immediately guilty for feeling relieved. She spent months texting him. Not angry texts, soft ones. Checking in. How are you? I saw something that reminded me of you. I miss talking to you. She was not trying to get back together. She was trying to keep her hand in the water. She was trying to hold the river still. One evening, her older sister sat beside her and said nothing for a long time. Then she said, "You are not grieving him. You are grieving the idea of him. The real person already moved on. You are holding a ghost." It was the truest thing anyone had ever said to her. If you are holding something that no longer exists in the form you remember, if you are waiting for someone to come back who has already changed, if you are punishing yourself for a version of events that cannot be rewritten, then you are not in pain because of what happened. You are in pain because you will not let what happened be finished. Letting go does not mean the love was not real. It does not mean the years did not matter. It does not mean you were wrong to feel what you felt. Letting go means you choose yourself over the story. You choose your present moment over your past pain. You choose to stop being the person something happened to, and you start being the person who is still here, still alive, still capable of something beautiful. She stopped texting, not all at once, slowly. And in the silence that followed, she began to hear herself again. Her own thoughts, her own desires, her own quiet voice, the one that had been drowned out by grief for so long. She did not find someone new immediately. She found something better first. She found herself. Letting go is not forgetting. It is choosing yourself over the pain. It is opening your hand. It is trusting that the river knows where it is going even when you do not. Lesson 6, the empty cup. There is a story about a scholar who visited a Zen master to learn about wisdom. The master offered him tea. He placed the cup in front of the scholar and began to pour. The tea filled the cup, and the master kept pouring. The tea spilled over the edge, onto the table, onto the floor. The scholar jumped back. He said, "Stop, stop. The cup is full. It cannot hold any more." The master put down the teapot and looked at him calmly. He said, "You are like this cup. You are so full of your own opinions, your own knowledge, your own certainty about how things should be, that there is no room for anything new. How can I show you anything if you will not first empty yourself?" That story is more than a story. It is a mirror. Think about what you are full of right now. Old anger you have been carrying since a conversation 2 years ago. A version of yourself you refuse to let go of because it felt safer than the unknown. A relationship that ended but still takes up space in your chest every single morning. A dream that did not happen the way you planned and that you will not let rest. What has been sitting in your cup for so long that there is no room for anything new. Read that again. Because the truth is that life is always trying to give you something. New connections, new paths, new versions of yourself that are quieter, deeper, more honest than who you were before. But if your hands are full of what was, you cannot receive what is. If your mind is full of yesterday, today has nowhere to land. He sat with his grief for 2 years, every morning, every evening. He kept the grief close because releasing it felt like betrayal. Like if he stopped hurting, it meant he had not loved enough. Like the pain was proof that something had mattered. He sat, he stayed still, he held on. And one morning he woke up and realized the grief was not keeping the memory alive. It was just keeping him small. He stepped outside, he walked, he breathed in the morning air for the first time in what felt like years. Not because the pain was gone, but because he made a decision. Not to forget, but to also live. He chose to empty the cup a little. Not all the way, not all at once, just a little. Just enough for one new morning to fit inside. That night he noticed the moon. He had not noticed the moon in 2 years. It was the same moon, and it was beautiful. This is what the present moment can give you when you stop gripping the past and stop chasing the future. It gives you the moon. It gives you the morning air. It gives you the small, real, ordinary beauty of being alive right now. Not the life you lost, not the life you are afraid of losing, the life that is actually here. Buddhism has always pointed to this, not to some distant mountain of enlightenment, not to a perfect, painless existence, but to this moment, right here, right now, this breath, this room, this strange, impermanent, precious slice of being alive. You breathe, you feel, you release, you begin again. Those three movements, breathing, releasing, beginning again, are not weakness. They are the whole practice. They are what every monk in every monastery has been doing for thousands of years. Not escaping life, returning to it again and again with open hands. The cup does not become less beautiful when it is empty. It becomes ready. It becomes open. It becomes the thing it was always meant to be. You don't lose yourself when you let go. You find yourself right here, right now. This is enough. Lesson 7. Who you become when you release. Pause for 1 second. Think about everything you have heard today. The second arrow, the clinging, the self that is not as fixed as you believed, the cup that needed to be emptied, the river that cannot be stopped. All of it points to the same place. All of it is asking you the same question. What are you still holding that you know somewhere honest and quiet inside yourself you need to release? Not what your fear is holding, not what your ego is protecting, what you know. What the still clear part of you has known perhaps for a very long time. Because here is what no one tells you about letting go. It is not the end of something. It is the beginning of everything. Siddhartha Gautama sat under a tree. He had left behind a palace, a wife, a son, a life of comfort that most humans will never know. He had walked away from all of it, not because it was bad, but because he understood with a clarity that cut through everything, that clinging to it was keeping him from something truer, something deeper, something that could not be given or taken away. He sat, he breathed, he released. He released the identity of the prince. He released the fear of impermanence. He released the need for the world to be other than it was. And in that release, something opened. Not loss, opening. Not emptiness, space. The kind of space where truth can finally live. That is what releasing does. Not to a monk under a tree 2,000 years ago. To you, today, in your life, in your body. In the tight place in your chest that has been there so long you have forgotten it is not supposed to be there. Those who hold on become holders. They hold their anger, their identity, their old stories, their fear of change. They become defined by what they will not release. Their world grows smaller every year. Their possibilities narrow. Their joy becomes harder to find because joy requires openness and openness requires letting go. Those who release become builders. They build new relationships from the wreckage of old ones. They build new careers from the ashes of what was taken. They build new identities that are more honest, more spacious, more alive than anything they held before. They become, in the truest sense, free. You are not what happened to you. You are not the relationship that ended. You are not the job you lost. You are not the version of yourself that failed or was left or was overlooked or was hurt. You are not even the version of yourself you have been so carefully protecting. You are the one who is still here, still breathing, still feeling, still capable of this moment, this thought, this choice. Letting go is not giving up. Letting go is the bravest thing a human being can do. It is saying, I trust life more than I trust my grip. It is saying, I am willing to become someone I have not yet met. It is saying, I am ready. It is not easy. No one who has ever truly released something will tell you it was easy. They will tell you it was terrifying. They will tell you there were nights they wanted to reach back and grab it all again. They will tell you the silence after letting go feels enormous, like standing in a room where all the furniture has been removed. But they will also tell you this: in that silence, they heard themselves for the first time. In that emptiness, they found something that had always been there, waiting patient, unchanged beneath all the noise. They found themselves. You don't lose yourself when you let go. You find yourself. Open your hands. Open your heart. Let life move through you, not against you. This is not the end of your story. This is the moment your real story begins. We have come a long way together today. We started with the question: have you ever held on to something so tightly that it broke you? And we sat inside that question for a while. We let it breathe. We let it be honest. We talked about upadana, the clinging, the way we confuse love with gripping and care with control. We talked about the second arrow, the one we shoot ourselves, the suffering we add to pain that was already enough. We talked about impermanence, about the river that cannot be stopped, about the cup that must be emptied before it can receive. We talked about Marcus Aurelius, who had everything and still reminded himself every single morning not to confuse his worth with his role. About Viktor Frankl, who lost everything and still found one freedom that could not be taken. About the people in our stories who held on for too long and what happened when they finally, slowly, chose to open their hands. And underneath all of it, one truth has been running like a quiet river from the beginning. Attachment is not love. Attachment is fear wearing the face of love. Real love, the kind Buddha pointed to, the kind Marcus Aurelius practiced, the kind Thich Nhat Hanh has given his whole life to teaching. That kind of love does not grip. It does not demand. It does not say, I will only be okay if you stay, if this lasts, if nothing changes. Real love says, I am here, fully. And I trust that whatever comes next, I will still be myself. That is the transformation. Not that you stop caring, but that you stop being afraid of losing what you care for. Not that you become cold, but that you become free. Free to love more deeply because you are no longer loving from fear. Free to live more fully because you are no longer spending your energy holding the world still. Letting go is not a one-time event. It is a daily practice. Some mornings you will wake up and the grip will be back. The old thought, the old pain, the old version of yourself standing in the doorway, refusing to leave. And on those mornings, you do not need to be perfect. You just need to remember. You breathe, you feel, you release, you begin again. That is enough. That has always been enough. If this lesson moved something in you today, please share it with someone who needs it. Leave it in the comments. Send it to a friend who is holding on to something they need to let go of. Your share could be the thing that changes their day, or their year, or the direction of their life. And tell me, what is one thing you are still holding on to that you know you need to release? Tell me in the comments below. I read every one. You don't lose yourself when you let go. You find yourself. Thank you for being here today. Keep listening, keep growing, and keep letting go. This lesson is part of our graded reader series made for English learners who want more than vocabulary. Until next time, take care of yourself. Goodbye.